Good day. This video is designed to give you a short introduction about an operating systems. So remember that IT 131 is actually focusing on two perspective or aspects, that's computer organization or architecture and the operating systems. So my focus as of now is the introduction to operating systems. So what is an operating system? An operating system is a program that controls execution of application programs and acts as an interface between applications and computer hardware. So we are aware that the operating systems that we know, for example, Windows and Linux and other related operating system operates within the interaction between the user and the hardware part of your computer. We can easily interact with the computer because of the operating systems. The applications that we are running is actually executed with the operating system. So aside from that, it also manage systems. So meaning if you say manage systems, operating system is a separate program, and the purpose is it runs along with your application. So we have the exclude applications. That means it runs separately, meaning it assists your application when it runs. Although there is a further explanation for this one, but as of now, we will imagine that your operating system are the one operating or your interface between your hardware components and as a user or your applications. So there are three major elements in an operating systems, and that one is user interface, since we know that it's an interface between your computer hardware and the user, you as a user or your application itself. So we have three major components: the user interface, the kernel mode, or the, the core of the operating systems, and the file management systems. So the first one is user interface, the part of the operating systems that you interface with. So in our case, we are interacting with operating systems along with your applications. Kernel, the core of the OS. In fact, in my personal knowledge, I consider the operating systems as the kernel itself. It interacts with the BIOS or the basic input-output system at the end and user interface at the other end. It, I consider personally, I, although it's not theoretically right. Kernel, I consider OS as the kernel itself, but it's more than the operating system. The core functions of the operating systems resides on the kernel sides of the OS. And lastly, it includes also file management system support as part of the operating system. So it's hard also to provide an interface in your hardware without the file management system. So we have three major components, the basic components of an operating system. So to illustrate things, this is an interaction on the user perspective, so that majority of us will be have enough background on using operating systems. In fact, we know example of an operating system is maybe we are familiar with Windows 10 already, and that's your operating systems, and some other may use Mac operating system. So in this interaction, it will illustrate from user to the hardware. So in the first part, the drawing, this one, the first drawing, we will read the diagram on the upper left side. The user actually interacts with your applications. The file, this one are the file, but these are the applications. And when the user specify use an application, it will interact also with the operating system. So that means there is an arrow between the list of application to your operating system. Um, and the operating system will provide a file handler which determines the file location, access file, and marks the file to read only. So that means when an application is open, the operating systems will provide file handling, determines the file location of the application or the file that will be open, access the file, and marks the file read only. So that's the work of your operating systems. So if you notice, this one is, I think you've known this in your Microsoft Office, for instance, or any Office applications, that automatically your operating system will mark this and read only, meaning you cannot edit. But although these are security issues, but Operating systems enable one file that in case it will be open or one application will be open, it will not allow other operations on that particular file, and that part aspects would be part of the work of the operating systems. And the operating system will execute or interface or actually execute the actual operation within your hardware component. So if you can imagine, that's why we are also discussing computer architecture or organization, because it is closely related to your operating system, since the file operations within your operating systems will be forwarded to the hardware component, and your actual CPU will actually execute the application or execute the command that an operating system wants to execute. So if you look at the combination of your computer architecture and operating systems, they are closely related. In fact, we will start with files. There are files also intended to run in a certain operating systems, but majority as of now is that the file system is somehow a file or a program or application is actually created to support multi-platform operating systems. But in reality, it might be that files can be designed to a certain operating systems only. So same with the operating system and the computer hardware. That's why the arrow tailored, meaning a certain operating system is tailored into a certain hardware. That's why you cannot run easily. Of course, we are also open. There are portable operating systems that can run in any hardware, but in practice, majority of the operating systems is designed to run a certain set of instruction or instruction set in your computer architecture. That means you cannot easily run an operating system not designed for a certain instruction set or a certain group of hardware. That's why I see tailor fit. The same with operating systems run on a certain file. But the common practice now is the portability of your application. That means we will try to develop computer applications that will run in any hardware. That's why there are programming languages, because we are more on programming. There are programming languages that intends to run in any operating systems, so that operating systems also is somehow adapt to the portability of the program. But strictly speaking, some applications or some operating systems are actually designed to a certain hardware, such that your applications, there is an intended operating systems that it will run, and an operating system also is designed for a certain, I would say, instruction set in a computer hardware. That's why we cannot run, for instance, Mac applications directly to an IBM design Intel-based hardware, because operating systems such as Windows were actually tailored fit into the computer hardware. But sir, how about those who will, yes, we have a virtual, meaning if we will design a portable operating systems, there are aspects that we need to have a middle software that will convert, somehow understand the instruction set of your operating system, not compatible with the computer hardware instruction set. So, and that's the perspective. So I'll repeat to summarize that one. The user will use a computer, and the interface is in particular will go directly into the hardware. In fact, in the operating system. In fact, I've said here on the kernel side, that's the base, the BIOS. So that means when you start a computer, so I'll just illustrate, when you start a computer, it will enable the operating system to load into the RAM. I think I'm not sure if this was discussed in one of your subjects or even in high school. I think that's a part. When you turn on your computer, and the first instances, there is the read-only memory part of your computer will be turned on, and it will trigger actually the operating systems to run, and the operating system will prepare your computer to open some applications. That means the first thing that will run into your computer as after the basic input-output system, which functions as enabler of all your applications and drivers related to that installed along with the operating systems, siya ang magte-trigger ng majority of your applications na pwedeng i-run within the operating systems and related drivers. So after that, open the application. So when you open the computer as of now, so you will open an application. That's the time this perspective will start. Your file will be open and it will go along with your operating systems and will be executed in your computer hardware. So every move in your computer is up in your applications will be managed by the operating system so that those applications that you want will function towards the hardware side. So if you can't, because actual execute in happens in your CPU, so somehow the applications that you are running is very dependent on the operating systems, and the operating systems will make specific commands for your hardware to execute the instructions that you want, but this will be blind to us. We are blinded actually as a user on how the operating system specifically operates. We have a basic concept for this one, but the implementation would be not part of the course. Okay.